Now I am. All right. Thank you, choir, Abby, instrumentalists. Hey, I need to do some, not pulpit work. I'm just trying to find the sweet spot up here. Somewhere up there. Okay. I do need to get a point of business real quick, or just some housekeeping stuff, because I need, if you have not, got nothing to do with the sermon, I'm just going to let you get on your phone during the sermon if you need to, and it's okay. If you haven't signed up for the blood drive, then what better way to give life to somebody than doing that? And so I'm trying to do that right now, but I asked my mom a question, and she said sign up for all of them. So she didn't. Can I sign up for all four? Like platelets and white blood cells and red and just get it all? No? Okay. I guess some of y'all would know better than I do. So if you haven't done that, you can find that on the Evangel. And speaking of the Evangel, who caught the heresy in there this week? Who read the Evangel this week? Because I'm wondering if anybody read it, because I had one person ask me, did you really mean that? And here's what I said, because I left out a very, very, very important little three-letter word. I said, God causes sin. God causes sin. And I was supposed to write, God does not cause sin, and somehow that got left out. And we fixed it in the, I think, the electronic version, but I was curious on if that made any of you just conflicted inside. That God would cause sin. Obviously, God doesn't cause sin. But my question here is, how do you handle conflict? How do you handle conflict? Is it fight or flight? How do you handle when things don't go your way, when things are against you? If we're honest, most of us don't like conflict. In fact, we would rather not deal with the conflict and maybe find a way around it. But there are times and there are situations in our life when we will fight, right? I mean, 4th of July celebration, that's a good part of that, right? So there are times in our life where there are things that we're not going to run from, but we're going to fight. What are those things that prompt you to fight in conflict? How do you handle conflict? Because if I'm honest, and I want to be honest, right? I don't always handle conflict the way I probably should handle conflict. Pastors aren't perfect, right? See if you've ever had a moment like this. I guess I should preface this by I didn't do anything that I don't think to detract from the name of Jesus or our church. But see if you've ever had a moment like this. Eden was playing softball, and she's been playing softball for a few years now, and she's usually on the same team as her friend Callie. And normally it's me and all of our family and Robbie and Katie Odom and Janice and Jody Jacobs, and in most of the games, the umpires, they do really well, but every now and then you get one that just doesn't seem to have it all quite together, and that's when we have to calm Jody down, because, right? Not really. If you know Jody, he's like the coolest guy in the room. But every now and then that happens. There was this one night that this umpire was making the wrong calls constantly. And I'm not just armchairing it over here. I mean, he really is. I mean, I don't know what was going on with this guy. It's like that he had already made a few, and now he just couldn't stop himself because it'd make him look bad, so he's just going to keep doing it all night long. And this particular, guy, I mean, I don't like seeing wrong calls made against any kid, especially my kid, right? And all night long, this guy's strike zone, this is fast pitch softball, it was all over the place. So Eden gets up, and, the first strike was above her head. No lie, above her head. She didn't swing, it just went above her head. The catcher had to jump up and catch the ball. Strike. The next one was she's a right-handed batter. It was in the left-hander's batter's box because the catcher had to go over and catch the ball. Strike. The third strike, for this umpire too. No, I'm just kidding. But the third strike was it hit in front of the plate, bounced across the plate, into the catcher's glove, and he calls it a strike. Now, at this point, I've got to defend my kid, right? Y'all know how that is. Y'all been there. Got to defend my kid. And I'm trying to I'm trying to argue the calls because we sit like right beside him, and we're trying to argue these calls. Rochelle's telling me to be quiet, and we're going back and forth and all this. And then in the middle of this, I'm texting Clint, who is our student pastor, if you don't know, and he's a baseball umpire. And I'm like, Clint, give me the best sayings against an umpire you've heard. Most of them I can't say. But one of them was something like, hey, ump, check your voicemail. You've got some missed calls. Everything in me wanted to run out onto that field and fight for my kid because someone had treated my kid unfairly. If you're wondering, by God's grace, Rochelle's prompting, I didn't do anything too public. But the question is, why did I react that way? Why was that my reaction? Well, the simple question is because I love my kid and all of my kids, and I only want what's best for them. I will fight for them. I don't like it when they're treated unfairly. And I'm pretty sure you fight for your kids in the same way too, right? I mean, you'll go into battle, maybe even die for those people that you love. But have you ever wondered why we react that way? Why is it that we react that way when those that we love come into conflict? See, when conflict comes up, most of us want to take flight, but there are things that we say, no, we're going to stay and fight for. Where does that come from? One writer said, and I agree with him, that it's a holdover from being made in the image of God. That this is a holdover of being made in God's own image. Did you know that God fights for his kids? That he defends his kid even more than we do our own. So if I'm quick to defend my kid, man, how much more is God quick to do that? So I want to talk to you briefly this morning about conflict. See, conflict is the stuff of life. Did you know that there are only 4 chapters in the Bible? In this book, there's only 4 chapters that do not have conflict in them. Genesis 1 and 2 and Revelation 21 and 2. The bookends. The rest of it is filled with conflict, just like our life. We cannot get away from conflict. It's everywhere. So instead of trying to run from all conflict, why not learn how to respond in conflict? If God is fighting for us in conflict, and we'll see that he is, then I wonder how God would want us to respond to conflict. I wonder how different we would seem to the non-Christians, to skeptics, to those who haven't been to church in a while, if we handled conflict the way God wants us to handle it. So here's what the Bible has to say about this, or what God has to say about it in the Bible. If you turn to Daniel chapter 2, that's where we're going to be this morning. It's a little past the middle of the Bible. Just go past Ezekiel, then you get to Daniel. If you don't have a Bible, just, the words are going to be on the screen, but we also have free ones out in the foyer. If you need a Bible, someone would be glad to get you one. And you can turn to Daniel 2, and to bring you up to speed where we are in our journey through the Bible. So Israel, God's chosen people, have consistently disobeyed God and not fulfilled their part of the covenant. And so because of that, God had told them a long time ago that if you don't listen to me, if you don't follow me, if you let all these other gods ahead of me, then this is what's going to happen. It eventually ends in captivity. And fast forward several hundred years, and they found themselves in captivity now. They're in Babylon. Daniel is a prophet that God uses there in Babylon. He's taken from his home to Babylon with his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Later, you will know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But that's his friends in Daniel. And in Daniel 1, we're told about how Daniel and his friends were faithful to God, even while learning to live in this new hostile place. In fact, the whole book of Daniel really is about faithfully following God in exile. That's what the whole book is about. And so that's chapter 1, is that they were ushered into, or they were brought into the service of the king as sort of wise men in training. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's their jobs here. In chapter 2, we get to the king of Babylon, who is Nebuchadnezzar, the one who had taken over Israel and Judah and destroyed Jerusalem and all that. And so in that, he has this crazy dream in chapter 2. Now, it's through the dream and the interpretation that I think we're going to learn a little about how God wants us to handle conflict. Because if anybody knew about conflict, it was Daniel. It was these companions with Daniel. They're later going to be in the fire. Daniel's going to be in a lion's den. I mean, he knew what conflict was, and Daniel consistently shows up and follows God in the right way in this. So I want you to, the points will be on the screen, but we're going to read a lot this morning, okay? Because I don't want you to miss the story. The whole story is fascinating, but we got large sections to read, so we're going to read it. I think you'll be able to follow along with it, just because it's narrative, it's fascinating, and then we'll make the observations as we go along. All right, so pick up chapter 2, verse 1 with me. It says, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. So these are multiple dreams that he's having, not just one, but multiple ones. His spirit was troubled. He's been given anxiety. These are making him anxious. And his sleep left him. Now he's got insomnia. He cannot find any sleep. Ever been there? Something just keeps you up at night over and over and over, right? So this is the king here. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word for me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show me the dream and its interpretations, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation. They answered the king a second time and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word for me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand. For no great and powerful king has asked such a thing as of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. They weren't very far off, by the way. Because of this, the king was angry and very furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree of the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel. And Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. So the king here has a series of dreams, and they kept him up at night. And obviously that builds anxiety, that builds stress, that builds all these things in it with no sleep and wanting to find out what these are. We've probably been there, felt that at times, but these were big deal dreams. And the reason is because in that time in history, dreams meant way more than they do today. In fact, people believed that dreams were connected to the future direction of political figures and of nations. So they were a big deal. The king was worried. What is about to happen to my kingdom? He's wanting to know, am I going to be king? What is going on in this dream? He thought that the dreams were going to show part of the future, and we'll see that, they were actually. In fact, this is not something that he would wake up and his wife would just say, just go back to sleep. It's just a dream. These kept him up at night. So to find some relief and meaning, he called all the so-called experts that could interpret dreams, that could understand these things. He called the sorcerers, the magicians, the enchanters, probably Harry Potter. They praised the king. That was a joke, He's not in there. They praised the king. They were his yes men. Oh, king, live forever. But the king didn't want yes men. He needed answers here. And so he gave them this impossible task. He said, number one, tell me what I dreamed. Number two, tell me what it means. Tell me what I dreamed and tell me what it means. Now, I've been asked as a pastor, you get asked that all the time, hey, what do you think this means? Nobody has ever come and said, hey, tell me what I dreamed. and then tell me what it means. That's impossible, right? They say that it's impossible. And the consequences were life-giving or life-taking. You get it right, you get rich. You get it wrong, you get dead. Simple as that. Your neck is on the line here. So they realize it's impossible. The answer is clear. The thing that the king asks is difficult. No one can show it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh, they say. They're more right than they realize here, by the way. But this wasn't the answer at the time the king wanted. So he ordered all the wise men in the kingdom there to be executed because nobody could fulfill his demands. And since he was the king, he had the ability to do that. This is where Daniel and his friends enter the story. They were part of this wise guy guild. They were probably still in training from chapter 1, but the king's captain came looking for them. His name was Arioch. And I want you to notice, hone in on how Daniel responded and how he did not respond to Arioch. Verse 14 says, Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. Now, what that reads or really means is that Daniel responded, he replied with prudence and discretion, or as we will say, with wisdom and tact. He replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, who came to kill him and his friends. How would you respond if somebody came to take your head? Daniel responded here with wisdom and tact. Wisdom is in conflict is knowing the facts, and when you don't have them, you just don't have them. Knowing what you need to know, or getting information on what you don't know. That's wisdom. Not flying off the handle, not making up, not filling in the blanks when you don't know something. Daniel here wants the knowledge. He wants to know what's going on. But more than that, he used tact. That word is defined. When I looked it up, it's defined as a keen sense of what to say or what to do to avoid giving offense, and skill in dealing with difficult or delicate situations. Do you think this was a difficult and delicate situation? Absolutely. I mean, it was very difficult. The guy's coming to kill you. It was delicate. You said the wrong thing. You did the wrong thing. Off with your head. Daniel knew that. So here's the idea. Here's the first idea here. At the first sign of conflict, don't lose your head. At the first sign of conflict, don't lose your head. What did Daniel do? He reacted with wisdom and tact. He reacted with wisdom and tact. If you can't remember all that, just say react with tact. Say that. React with tact. Okay? That's something God gives us to put a pause, a hold on moving forward and making up things and trying to right the wrong ourselves in conflict. Sometimes we just need to pause with wisdom and tact. There are things that we need to know to move forward. We need the time to get to know those things. There's ways to respond to those who are in conflict with us. And it's not always, well, sometimes we don't when we want to do it not nicely, right? But that's not Daniel. He didn't run. He didn't try to hide. He wasn't sarcastic. He wasn't belligerent. He wasn't any of those things. He was skilled at knowing what to ask and how to ask it. He didn't lose his head because he used wisdom and tact in his conflict. Now pick up with verse 17. We're going to keep reading. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light and dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might and have made known to me what we ask of you. You have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and thus said to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, that's his Babylonian name, are you able to make known to me the dreams that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream are the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, I've lost my place here. So you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. So in this part here, what we see, did you see how Daniel reacted? He took time during this conflict in front of Arioch, not knowing whether he was going to live or die. He took time and he asked that the king would give him some time. He asked, he wanted to seek the resolution, or he wanted to seek the Lord before he sought the resolution to the conflict. And I think that's important. Sometimes we're so worried about the answer to the conflict that we sort of sidestep knowing the Lord more through the conflict. The one who's actually going to give reason and answers to the conflict. Sometimes we can sidestep him if we're not careful and want the resolution more than we do the Lord. But that's not Daniel. In fact, what we see here is that in our conflict, resist the urge to move too fast. Resist the urge to move too fast through your conflict. So the king granted Daniel some time, and the first thing that Daniel did was to call his friends and to come pray, right? I love that last song that the choir sing, that if we will pray, right? If we're going to get together and pray. So that's what they did. Why did he do that? Why not buy some time? Why not, tell his friends and then skip town? Why did Daniel do that? Well, number one, he's a man of integrity, but he also is a realist. He's going to do what God wants him to do anyway, because he loves the Lord and he's following him. All through the book we see that. But he's also a realist. I mean, really, where can he go that the king is not going to find him? He can't go anywhere. He knows that the conflict is not going to go away. There's no amount of flight that he can do or running that he can do to get away from this conflict. The conflict will always find him. And so he faces it, right? So Daniel got his friends together. They went to the one person who knows everything, even the secret things like dreams. So they went to God, and he tells the king, after he gets the interpretation in a vision, he tells the king that, you can't make sense of this. There's no Babylonian wise men can't make sense of this. He says, not even I can make sense of this. There's only one who can make sense of this. And there's a God in heaven who reveals mysteries to the king. So why is it that if God is the one that we need to go to first, why is it that he's often the last resort, not the first response when conflict comes up? I mean, think about it. Sometimes in small conflicts, we often don't even go to the Lord until much later, until they become much bigger conflicts. It could be a disagreement within an office or an issue with a parent to a kid. And instead of going, the first thing that we should do is go to the Lord. Even though it may seem minor, we think, you know what, I can handle this and I'll take care of it. There's no reason. We don't even think it really. We just don't even think about going to God with some of these things. But they're so small. Surely, there's no way that I can't deal with it. Surely I can deal with this. But oftentimes what happens is that small problem is not dealt with properly and biblically in the way God wants. And that small problem grows into a much bigger problem. And then it's those big problems that of course I go to God. Of course, yeah, but we should have done it on the front end, not the back end. And so we see Daniel doing that. He resisted the urge to move too fast. He didn't try to figure out all the details yet. He wanted to go to the Lord because the Lord is the one who directs our path. The Lord is the one that has insight. The Lord is the one that has all wisdom, not us. So Daniel came to him first. And we have to resist the urge to move too fast. Daniel sought the Lord more than he did a resolution to the conflict, and the same is true for us. We need to seek the Lord in times of conflict more than we do a resolution to that conflict. I mean, think about it. What if Daniel would not have done that? What if Daniel wouldn't have sought the Lord through prayer with his friends? Well, number one, it wouldn't be in here. And it wouldn't have gotten written down. It wouldn't encourage us today. It wouldn't have highlighted who God was as the revealer of all mysteries. And the same is true for us. I mean, what if God, through the conflict, wants to do something eternal in your life and in my life? And sometimes, if we're not careful, we circumvent God's purpose in our life by trying to move too fast through that conflict. Resist the urge to move too fast. This is going to get to the next point, and I'm going to state the point because not all conflict is bad conflict. Sometimes we need conflict. Sometimes conflict is good. I mean, when we practice for sports, I mean, it's one thing just, throwing a football. It's much different when there's conflict involved and the other team is chasing the quarterback during practice, right? There's a difference there. We need conflict sometimes. Not all conflict is bad. Some conflict is good, and we need it. But more than that, what we see in the story here of Daniel is that we need to remember that God ordains conflict. That God himself ordains conflict. That's a big thought, but I want to break that down. So we get to the dream, and we get to what it's all about. And look with me at verse 31. Let's read through the dream here. Daniel's talking to the king now. He says, "You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, the stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream." So here's the interpretation. So he told him the dream, what it was, and now he's going to interpret it now. "Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom and the power and the might and the glory, and into whose hands he has given wherever they dwell the children of man, the beasts of the fields and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, such strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage. But they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God is made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Remember that God ordains conflict. In verses 31 through 35, I just said that, Daniel gets the first part right. He tells the king what the dream is. The king knew what the dream is, but the king needed to know, is Daniel the real deal or not? Daniel hits it perfectly. And then he, sees this impressive looking statue that's frightening to him. The head was gold, the chest and arms were silver, the abdomen and the thighs were bronze, the legs were iron, and its feet were a mixture of iron and clay. The dream also consisted of a large stone not cut by human hands, and the stone struck the statue and destroyed it where nothing else could be found. And yet this stone continued to grow into a mountain, and it filled the earth. And then in verse 36 to 45, Daniel then gives the interpretation of the dream to the king. And so basically the interpretation, and it signifies four Gentile kingdoms through history. And pretty much every scholar agrees with that what Daniel sees, what he's interpreting, is four Gentile, non-Jewish kingdoms through history. Now, there are some differences of opinion on those kingdoms, but we're not going to get into the differences today. We're just showing what my particular understanding is what the common one would be. But head of gold, that's definitely Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylonian. The arms and chest, there's two arms kind of idea. The Medo-Persian kingdom of Cyrus the Great that came after Babylon. The bronze midsection, that would be Greece under Alexander the Great. The iron legs, the one who crushed everyone, was Rome. And then the feet, the iron feet mixed with clay. Many people, I included, would say that's an established Rome, reestablished Rome that we read about in Daniel 7, the end times, and the 10, kingdoms being like the 10 toes. And so there's that. Now, what I want to get to is, how does this work out in God ordaining conflict? Well, look at the last kingdom. In the last kingdom, verses 44 through 45, he talks about the kingdom of heaven coming. And it breaks in, and then it destroys every other kingdom that has ever been in this world. And the truth that we see out of the kingdom of God here, one commentator wrote it like this. Number one, God's kingdom will be established while these 10 kings are ruling. Number two, God's kingdom has a divine origin. Number three, God's kingdom is an eternal kingdom. All the other ones go away like chaff on a threshing floor, but not God's kingdom. It's still going. It will be an eternal kingdom. And number four, God's kingdom comes in full force when Jesus comes back to rule and to reign. So what does the dream, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar have and its interpretation, have to do with God ordaining conflict? It means that conflict is not there to use us like we so often feel, but God uses conflict for his people, for his redemptive purposes. The whole point that he's showing Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel is that it may seem like the odds are stacked against you, but God wins in the end. Every other conflict and every other kingdom will go away, but not God's. And it didn't start with Daniel. It actually started all the way back in Genesis 3:15. Listen to what God said to the serpent as he gave the punishment. And I'm going to emphasize these so you don't miss it. I will put enmity between the woman, or you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. Who put the conflict there? God did. God put the conflict there. Does God call sin? Absolutely not. Does God use conflict for his redemptive purposes? Absolutely. Ever since the creation of the world, God has done that. He uses conflict for those purposes in our lives. I mean, think about it. What is the greatest conflict that the world has ever saw? Whatever it is, and I'm going to give you the answer what I think in a second, but surely we can agree that whatever the greatest conflict, if there's a resolution, it will be the greatest resolution the world has ever seen. It's not the American Revolution. It's not World War I. It's not World War II or any other war, because one war may be fought and won, but there's going to be another one that comes, all the way to when God wraps it up. That will consistently happen. So what is the greatest conflict that the world has ever seen and has the greatest result that the world has ever seen? The greatest conflict was when the sinless Son of God was hung on a Roman cross and gave his life. Because all of history changed in that moment, which also brought the greatest resolution to the history of mankind. Because now, once we were separated for eternity in death, now there's been a bridge that has been made back to a holy God, a God that loves us unconditionally, a God that loves us enough to send his Son to die for us. The greatest conflict was God used for our redemptive purposes. We see it in Daniel. that as things pile up against us, they hurt, they're painful, they're hard, but in the end, God is over all of those things. He wins in the end. God can be glorified through our conflict, and he can use it in our life. Here's the fourth quick truth that we see in here. Remain humble through the process. Remain humble through this process of conflict. Look at verse 46 and 49. It says, Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of lords and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefects over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request to the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's their Babylonian names, over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained at the king's court. So Daniel gets it right. He told the king what the dream was. He interpreted the dream for the king. And then the king upheld his part of the bargain. He gave Daniel gifts and all these things, and he tells Daniel that God is the one true God here. He humbled himself before Daniel, and I don't think we need to misread this. I know it reads like he's humbling himself before Daniel, but really he's humbling himself before Daniel as a representation or a representative of God. And so he humbles himself before Daniel as God's representative. And this doesn't mean that the king was saved right here, because we wouldn't have chapter 3 and some other areas of that. But it does mean that there was another time in Daniel 4 where God broke into the king's arrogance again. And I do believe, and you don't have to agree with this, but I do believe that we'll see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven one day, because God humbled him so much that in chapter 4 it's very clear that he's not the big dog on the throne anymore. God is, and he's worshiping God at this point. And so at every turn in every conflict, what we see Daniel doing is constantly going back to God. This humility that's exhibited through Daniel and now through Nebuchadnezzar. And yet at every turn of our conflict, it's so easy to think that, man, look what I did. Look how I got this. Look at the decision that I made here. Good or bad. Good or bad. If things begin to go right, we can think, man, look what I was able to do through this. If things got worse, man, it's all my fault. And yes, there's probably a little truth in all that. But the greatest truth that we're seeing here is that God is at work in and through your conflict. He's at work in your life and for the good of others around you, even the person you're in conflict with, like he was with Nebuchadnezzar here. So we humble ourselves before the Lord, the revealer of mysteries. And then what he's revealed is that he wins. So here's how we're going to finish this up. The next time you face conflict, the next argument that you have at home with your spouse, or the next time you're passed over for a promotion at work, the next time, your friends talk about you behind your back, or whatever it is, the next conflict, how are you going to respond? What is going to be different in your life now of hearing Daniel 2? Maybe react with a little bit more wisdom and tact. Maybe refusing to move too fast through that conflict. Maybe remembering that God has ordained that conflict for his glory and your good. Remaining humble through that process. So if God used Daniel to respond to the threat of a king like this, surely we can respond in the same way, right? He wants us to respond to our friends, our families, and even strangers, and at least most of them are not trying to kill us, right? So how crazy would it be if we all began to respond to conflict this way? I wonder how many people would be drawn to a God whose kids don't fly off the handle and fight with each other and try to fight all their own battles by themselves. I wonder how many people will be drawn to a God who's the dad takes care of their kids because he loves them that much, that he fights for them. I wonder how many people would want to be one of God's kids because of how he fights for them, how he rights wrongs. And yeah, it may not come today, and it may not come next week or next month or next year. But it's coming one day because God wins in the end. Jesus is judge, and he will right every wrong. Every single unfair treatment of his children will be righted one day. So maybe that's where some of you need to start. I don't know. Maybe that's where your next step is. Maybe you've never come into God's family through Jesus. If that's your next step, I'm going to be down front. You can talk to God right where you are. Just tell him, God, I have sin. I know my sin separates me from you. I want Jesus in my life. I trust in him. And God adopts you into his family. Or if you need help with that, I'm going to be down front. Maybe that's where you need to start. Maybe your next step is to join a faith family that doesn't minimize conflict, but maximizes God's role in it. Maybe that's where you need to start, is joining a faith family who will walk through this with you. Or maybe your next step is just something as simple of just letting God know that you want him more than you want the resolution to the conflict. Whatever it is, let's be obedient as God leads. Let's pray. Lord, we love you. We thank you. We ask that you would lead us through this time of response, just as you have led us through the entire time together this morning. Lord, we want to honor you in how we respond. So we ask that your Spirit would have freedom to move and to work in our midst. We love you, Jesus. We ask this in your name. Amen.